Everyone. I'm going to make a couple of announcements as you're taking your seats. Let me go through my... did you all get to see the Chuck Williams Museum exhibit? Isn't that amazing? If you didn't get to see it because you only ate the food that was outside of the museum, I hope that you get a chance to do it because it's something that's really, really unique and special to the Copia experience here. I want to thank our chefs for lunch and our gold and bronze sponsors for lunch. So let's give a round of applause to our sponsors. As always, we'll be sending out recipes after the conference. The ones from the demos are in the app, and you'll get the ones from the meals afterwards. I don't know if I've mentioned, but all of the sessions that are taking place here in Copia are being webcast, so webcast live, and then those videos are archived. And then during the breakouts, the sessions here are also webcast. The sessions in the Napa Valley Vintners Theater are videotaped and will be added to the webcast. So among the blasts that you will receive after the conference will be linked to the video. So we're trying to really make sure you get as much of this on video afterwards, which is useful to share for your team if there's anything you want to remember, etc. I also want to tell you about a couple of our other conferences. So you've heard a lot about menus of change already. I just want to point out three thematic directions for the program this year. The Eat Lancet report and strategies for meeting the targets of the Eat Lancet report, because that's one of the big questions. We hear a lot about it. How do we actually meet those targets as an industry? The business of healthy, sustainable, delicious carbohydrates. We've done all of that around protein. Now it's around carbohydrates that we're going to have some sessions and white papers, and change management. So those are three different tracks of sessions at Menus of Change. There is a discount code that you get. You get 15% off registration. You will also receive that discount code in your emails, but it's never too early to save the dates and register. Then Worlds of Flavor, where you also get 15% off in November back here at Copia. We're exploring cultures of deliciousness. So the idea of deliciousness as something very ancient. We'll have demos from chefs from the Mediterranean, Middle East, and South Asia. Again, exploring this idea of what makes something truly delicious historically. How do these concepts continue to translate now? And then we'll also have series of sessions that question what is delicious and what makes something delicious like that. You know, and that might be technique driven, that might be concept driven, that might be more conceptual only. So we hope that you'll join us again here in November 6th through 8th. And then if you want a chance to win a free registration to a conference, you can fill out an evaluation survey. We really encourage you, as you know, if you've ever attended a CIA program, we take evaluations extremely seriously to build the future year's programs, because you get a chance to tell us what we did well, what we did not do well, which presenters, which topics you would like to hear about when you attend the conference again, should you consider that. So you will also receive an email about that, but we really encourage you to actually fill out the evaluation while you're still here. It's still top of mind before you go on with your weekend tomorrow. Here is the link, tinyurl.com/GPF19 evaluation. You can also fill out the evaluation in the app. And now, without further ado, I will welcome back Allison Ryder to the podium.
Hi, everyone. Spotlight number 3 of 4. So I talked last time, let's see if we get the slides up and going. So I talked last time about plant-based diet quality, and now we're going to talk about animal proteins in the context of plant-forward menus. So another great infographic to start us off, and this is again looking at the right side. We're seeing that red meat is definitely by far the biggest contributor to carbon emissions. And on the right side is some cool research from Harvard that looked at the impact of making swaps of certain food components compared to red meat and what the effects are on total premature death risk. And basically everything looks better compared to red meat. And we're going to look specifically at some of the animal proteins and how to make those decisions. Because when it comes to making protein choices, it's the package that matters. We don't just eat amino acids on their own, unless you're eating in supplements. We eat them in foods. So it's important to look at what else you're getting with that package. And this is just one example. If we compare red meat to legumes as an example, so 4-ounce steak, and this is, smaller than what we would see on most menus, certainly. But you're getting 30 grams of protein, which is certainly a lot. You're getting that saturated fat. You're getting some beneficial nutrients as well, things like B12, which are hard to find in non-animal sources. But the concern specifically with red meat and processed meat, yes, it's a saturated fat. It could potentially be the sodium, nitrates, nitrites in processed meat. But there's other components too, related to the heme iron content, related to cooking methods. So Harvard's done a lot of research on the high heat grilling methods that create carcinogenic compounds. So I know as chefs we all love the grilling, the char marks, but that's a potentially dangerous cooking technique there. So contrast that then with legumes. You're getting the benefit of the protein fiber combo, which really supports satiety. And fiber-wise, most Americans are getting like 10 to 12 grams of fiber per day, and we need like 25 to 35 grams at minimum. So those are just some ways that we're looking at those comparisons of red meat to other plant proteins. So definitely the message you're getting a lot through this conference is less red meat, less often, less red and processed meat. Harvard, through the nutrition source, has some really great resources. So they're just going beyond just the data, but really trying to help provide strategies as well. So I would direct you to this site for more information. And so as far as other key messages around what animal proteins to emphasize, certainly seafood with the omega-3 concentration is really important, but seafood is also a tricky topic with the connection of food safety, sustainability, and nutrition, and trying to consider all of that in the choices. And the menus of change principle here is more kinds of seafood, so to diversify our seafood that we're choosing on our menus. When it comes to poultry and eggs, certainly poultry is both healthier, more sustainable than beef, so that's a certain option to use in moderation. Eggs are a little tricky. Has anyone seen the recent research around eggs back in the news, right? So eggs were bad for a while, and now they're sort of coming back in, and now they're back out again. And so some take-home messages here, and I'm happy to answer questions if people have specific issues with this. But so there was a recent study, but the take-home messages with eggs is these 2 points, and I love the way David Katz just makes things like so simple and clear, like, are eggs good or bad for us? Yes. And that's with any food. Nutrition research is really hard to do. It's hard to prove like one food is good or bad. But if you're eating eggs instead of sugary breakfast cereal, yeah, they're going to look really good. If you're eating eggs with bacon, the full American breakfast, they're not going to look so good. So it matters what you're eating eggs with or what you're eating eggs instead of. But in the context of all the research, we know that that's certainly, eggs in moderation can certainly still be a good protein source. So that this new study doesn't dispel all of that. Dairy is certainly a little bit more complicated too, but just reimagining dairy in a more supportive role. And I think the one underlying theme here with animal proteins that we've heard in several different ways already is that it doesn't have to be either or, that it's this combination of both. So there's a lot of great strategies that we're learning with the flip and the blend and all of that. So that's my short spiel today. The last one tomorrow is going to be on biodiversity as the last kind of final compelling argument. So see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you, Allison. You're amazing. This next session is going to talk about the concept of satisfaction when it comes to plant-based food, because that's one thing that came out a lot in conversations with chefs preparing for this conference. The fact that their customers want satisfaction and are a little bit nervous that plant-based or plant-forward is not going to be as satisfying as something that is very heavy on animal protein. So I don't want to take any time away from our three wonderful presenters who will only introduce briefly their bios in the app for all three of them. Our first presenter is coming from Milan, from Erba Brusca, her restaurant in Italy. She was born in France from a French father and English mother and grew up in Chicago and North Carolina, just to explain her accent in case you were expecting a very Italian accent. Erba Brusca opened in 2011, and this year will inaugurate a small vegetable farm holding across the street from them. And Alice also has 4-year-old twins, because who needs more challenges when you have 13 hours on the lines? Alice Delcourt.
Hi. Thank you so much for being here today, and just bear with me because I definitely fall into the category of cook who has difficult social skills, and not so much experience with public speaking, but I'll do my best. So, yes, so like Anne said, I'm French-born and American-raised, and I have been living in Milan for about 15 years. I opened Erba Brusca about 8 years ago, and is on the outskirts of the city. The location has always been really important to us because we wanted to open a restaurant that really highlighted these kind of strange borderlands that tend to exist, especially in Europe, outside of really large cities, kind of where the cement begins to meet, well, in our case, rice fields, but also other agricultural lands. And it was the idea of kind of bringing people back out to these areas that have been kind of abandoned, because once they're agricultural lands and they're not close enough to the center of the city where people are really coming to live anymore. So by bringing people out there, we really wanted to show them that agricultural land was still around and it was still very close to the city, and that once the city was that type of agricultural land. So we wanted to have a restaurant that was based on relationships with our producers, our suppliers, our clients, and our staff. So all of those 4 elements are really important to us, and we consider them part of kind of a sustainable, organic business, I guess I would say. And the cooking was about respecting the seasons and serving really simple, good-tasting food that brings people together. So, and that kind of reflects itself in our price point, but also the type of ambiance you have and everything else. So, another reason we initially chose this location is because we had the space to have a small vegetable garden. This was just an added bonus to our other suppliers. We get most of our vegetables from a large organic farm, which is the first organic farm in Italy that opened in 1978, and it's actually on the metro line of Milan, which is really interesting for us. And they are our main supplier. So we have had this small vegetable garden that we've gotten different lettuces from, salads, herbs, leafy greens, and these kinds of things, which has always been really fun, but we've never been able to kind of supply the restaurant 100%. Until now, which Anne also said that this year we have leased a piece of land across the street from the restaurant, which is going to be a type of market garden if anyone does any kind of planting. It's a type of gardening that using polyculture and biointensive methods, we've really worked with the soil fertility. And so the idea is that the plants start digging vertically for their nutrients rather than horizontally, which usually happens in more industrial agriculture. So they can be planted very close together. The idea is that you get the biggest bang for your buck out of the land that you have. We have about half a hectare, which is just over an acre. So for us, this is really, really exciting, obviously. Today, one of the questions I was to answer was why plant-based or why plant-forward? And I had to kind of really think about it because it's something that we do, but it's not something that we often talk about. Oh, sorry, and there's also photos of the restaurant and some of the farm-to-table dinners we've done and just some of our products that we get from Italy and mostly local Milan producers. So I kind of saw it in a twofold. Personally, it's because I just wanted to be part of, I think, this important and necessary shift in the way that we eat that can hopefully positively impact our current environmental crisis, I would think that we can say at this point. And it's just really not a secret that we can't continue to support industrial and intensive agriculture and husbandry with the same kind of insatiable appetite that we have going on right now. I don't think that if you're a vegetarian or you're a vegan or omnivore or a meat eater that we can negate that there's a really huge problem, and the way that we're eating is just not sustainable in the long run. So this is on a personal level, has been kind of part of my plant-forward agenda, I guess. But I think that's not a really good enough reason to have people come and eat at your restaurant, probably. Most people just want to come and eat a meal out. At least that's how I feel in Italy. I don't think that everyone is looking to make a political statement when they go out, although it's nice when they do. So secondly, what I think is that vegetables are really about curiosity. And I think that's because they've been kind of neglected and ignored by chefs and cooks for so long in, let's just say, the last 30, 40, 50 years, that there's just enormous space that's there for experimentation and exploration that just, and now chefs are really experimenting, and we saw all these amazing recipes today and yesterday where people are really pushing the limits on what you can do with vegetables, because I don't think people have done that before. And, or at least since restaurants have become so important. I know that before there was lots of vegetables being eaten. And I think the challenge for me now is to make my clients curious as well, because obviously it's interesting for me as a chef to try new methods and do all these things, but how do I keep my clients interested? Because we all know what a delicious steak tastes like, and most people really know how to make it at home. But what about a brassica? Because that's what you're finding in Milan in the winter. I don't feel like we have a lot of great flavor memories around what something delicious is when you think about broccoli. I think people feel like it's like steamed or part of a crudité plate, or it's punishment. It's this kind of really depressing feeling around, especially certain kinds of vegetables. I'm not talking about, just picked tomato with a little bit of olive oil. That's easy, I think. So I think that by cooking vegetables as kind of the main star, by applying the same cooking techniques and excitement and condiments as we would to a steak or some kind of meat, that is what we really need to start focusing on as we move forward in this plant-based fashion. And just like a piece of meat, they need to be excitement. I mean, I think that steaks are great, but I think that we don't always know what to do, like a lamb shank or a pig head or something else. So I think that you really need to think about different cooking methods, spices, acidity, how do I make them creamy, all of these things that most of you know already, these kind of different things that feel good in our mouth. So how do I convince my clients, aside from just being really excited about the vegetables? I trick them. No, I really do. I have 2 tasting menus, and they're blind tasting menus. So the client doesn't know what they're getting. And it's kind of not a very done thing in Milan. People don't do a lot of blind tasting. And the price point is quite reasonable, I think. The 4-course is 34 euros, and the 6-course is 45 euros. And if they want to do a blind wine tasting, they can do that for an extra 22 euros. It's Italy, it's different price range than here. But people kind of like that. They think, oh, well, that's fun. I don't see that, and it makes sense because I get 4 courses for the same amount as 2. And then I'm really able to just kind of chuck in as many vegetables as I want, because they don't have to choose them, and they don't have any kind of preconceived notions of, oh, I don't like that, because they didn't have to read about it. I mean, there's times where I've served them other things like snails, and I just don't even tell them that they're snails. And I've had all these people eat snails, and they're like, oh, these are delicious. And then they said, oh my gosh, I hate snails. I've never eaten them, but these are so, that kind of thing. So more often than not, they really enjoy these vegetables. I've had more than one client say, I hate beets. So in Italy, the only beets you find are already pre-cooked, vacuum packed in the grocery store. They're really hard to find otherwise, unless you go to a farm. But we use beets a lot, and my farm has them, and so I use them, and people are always so shocked that they enjoyed them, that they ate them. And for me, this is the biggest compliment. Not that I took some amazing scampi and just grilled it, and they're like, oh, that's amazing. Well, that's what the sea made. But I want to show you what this farm made and how we made it to make something that you really love and enjoy and are satisfied by. I also think another way that we convince clients is a lot of our meat and fish options on the menu are kind of outside of people's comfort zone. So I don't use any red I don't use any beef at the restaurant. We haven't for about the last 5 years. And so I use a lot of, I have different agreements with different butchers who work with the National Forest, and when they do culling, and I take the game that's taken down and use a lot of that. I use lots of kind of lesser known fish. We use pigeon, lots of pheasant, and snails, like I was saying before, or offal. And so people are a little bit less inclined to gravitate towards those options unless they're really adventurous. And when they're really adventurous, they're already really excited about eating a vegetable anyways. And I think that kind of limits it. I know this makes it sound like my restaurant's really limited, but I think that should be a really good thing. I think that for me, it's always been an inspiration to have these limits. And I think that by only using sustainable meat and fish and by respecting the seasons, you naturally limit yourself to the agricultural cycles and therefore sensitize the clients to do the same. And we've had success. I mean, we're still open, so I guess we've had enough success to still be open. And even on the meat and fish plates, we've always tried to do a lower percentage of meat. So the idea is that the meat is not, in classical Italian food, you often will go to a restaurant and it'll say, you know, we have the lamb, and then on the other side of the menu, there's all the sides you can pick. And so the idea is that there's no thought has gone into what does lamb taste good with, and how can we do a smaller quantity of lamb so that the vegetables on the plate make up a larger percentage of them. So yeah. That was kind of my intro. But if people have questions during this, please feel free. So today I'm doing risotto, which I know that many food professionals know how to make already. But for me, it's a really important ingredient in our kitchen. We sell around 5 to 6 kilos of risotto a day, which for my size restaurant is quite a lot. It's about 60 portions of risotto a day. Risotto is obviously a plant in itself, or rice is a plant in itself. And the rice variety that we use in Italy is carnaroli. Some people use also vialone, I can't speak Italian. Vialone nano, which is a different type, but carnaroli is the most typical, and it has this amazing quality that it releases an enormous amount of rice starch while at the same time retaining its shape, which makes it simultaneously creamy and al dente, which is what you're looking for, okay? And it gives the kind of difference between that and kind of soupy rice. That's what we're going for here. Lombardia and Piemonte are kind of the biggest rice consumers and producers, but I would say that the best rice, although some people would argue, is in Lombardia. People tend to eat it more than anything else. They eat it more than pasta and everything else. You find rice about as far down as the Emilia-Romagna, but Emilia-Romagna is where they kind of start the kind of egg pasta and everything else, and then from there down, you don't see any risotto at all. Doesn't happen. So, but rice and risotto is an amazing vehicle for plant-based or plant-forward food. I found it to be this incredible way of kind of getting people to eat things that they normally would have a harder time kind of eating. So I'm going to start. Sorry, because I just realized I'm like a little over time. So I'll talk really briefly about what I'm doing. So this is probably a big faux pas for lots of people, but it's an absolute necessity. If you serve a certain amount of rice, you have to pre-cook it, okay? So I did that today I don't think anyone was willing to sit here and do 18 minutes of risotto cooking with me, so we pre-cooked the rice. So this is absolutely possible, and no one can tell the difference if you're buying a really great quality of rice, and that's what it comes down to. And I think that if any people here are doing high volume, this is like the best primo to do, so primo or pasta and rice. And because pasta just does not withstand any kind of like sitting time or on a plate, it's just dead as soon as it leaves the kitchen. And so whenever you're doing lots of people, it's a little bit complicated. But rice instead is like great to do for huge amounts of people. The idea though, when you pre-cook rice, so we start the rice off, you want to toast it in some kind of fat. We use olive oil. And some people use onion, some people don't. It really depends on what you're putting in your risotto. And you want to cook it until the rice is too hot to hold in your hand. So yes, you can look for translucency to see the two different kinds of starches, and people do a lot of that, but you really just want to grab it. And when it's too hot to hold, that's ready. It's ready to put broth onto it, and that's when you want to put it into the broth. To cover it with broth, sorry. I also think that, so rice is this great, because it's naturally sweet, it's this great way to get people to eat vegetables that are a little bit bitter or difficult. So we use a lot of like bitter dandelion or nettles, herbs maybe that are a little difficult. I also use actually beets a lot in the risotto. People really enjoy that because they just kind of soften all of that, and you're able to really get lots of people to get it, and it gets this beautiful green color. Today we're going to be making an asparagus risotto. You get this all the time in the spring. It's usually pretty not very interesting. The asparagus is really delicate and just kind of gets overwhelmed, I think, by the risotto. And so I tried to change it up a little bit, and we juiced some of the asparagus, and I'll put that in as part of the broth. And then the peelings of the asparagus we burnt, and we made like a burnt asparagus oil in, so you can see, I don't know, oh, there you go. You see the burnt asparagus peelings, and we make an oil out of it just to kind of use the whole thing. So, and now we're going to put some of this is the asparagus juice. I'm going to put a little bit of that in, and it kind of really pumps up the asparagus flavor. I'm just going to let that boil down a little bit. And then we've taken the asparagus. I'm just going to make a tiny little, like, fresh relish that's going to go on top. So rice really needs acidity, and you can do that with wine at the beginning, or you can do that with lemon or wine or whatever at the end. But we're just going to make a little, like, salad almost that's going to go on top. Here we go. We have some preserved lemons, some lemon juice, a little bit of spring onion, and then I have both mint and basil and marjoram. And I like to put that in, and then I put some of the asparagus oil in. So I'm almost done, Anne. I know I'm really late. Sorry.
Haven't gotten the hook yet, but I'm about.
I know. So just really quickly, everyone's wondering, okay, so how do you make a risotto plant-forward? Because obviously you usually put a ton of butter and cheese in here, but instead today we're gonna beat it with almond butter and oil. And the idea is that you still get the same amounts of fat to make the emulsion between the rice starch and the fats to give it the creaminess. So we're going to turn this off. Okay. And you just want to like really beat it. Like you want it to, what they say in Italian is they say all'onda, which means that you literally, it's like waves, and you want it to be like that. You want it to wave as you're beating it. Because that's the only thing that's going to make it creamy. So we have that, and then we just put the little chutney on top. And you can do that however you like, but it's kind of... And then I also have some honey, which I like to put on top. It's kind of stiff. There we go. And some almonds to kind of, finish it off. So I'm really sorry I'm over time, Anne.
Don't be. Thank you so much, Alice.
Thank you. Thanks.
You've definitely shown us how to coax flavor out of vegetables right there, for sure. Our next chef, Diego Moya, was born in Chile and raised on Long Island. He has worked in kitchens throughout South America and Europe. He's also worked on produce farms with a focus on biodynamics and permaculture. He's been back in New York for about a decade or close to it, where he, of course, in 2012 opened a supper club, because that's what young chefs did in New York in 2012. Then opened Hemlock, his own restaurant, in 2016. And then since January 2019, he's the executive chef of Racines, a Parisian bistro focused on sustainably farmed wines and food. And Diego is, without questions, one of the chefs in New York doing the most interesting things with vegetables now. So I'm very happy to welcome to the stage Diego Moya.
Hi guys, how are you? Super excited to be here. This is, well, mainly because of the weather, because New York is pretty bad right now. But cooking with vegetables and sustainability and planting and everything involved is kind of like my biggest passion. I started on the gardening side. So while I was still working in kitchens, I was really more focused on sustainability and farming practices. And I had the pleasure of working with a really amazing chef in France, Alain Passard. He's a chef at Arpège. And this was around the time where he had moved the kitchen towards a purely vegetable tasting menu. And for me, I found that incredibly inspiring. What you could do with vegetable by vegetable, with the menu as a whole, and still keep that same level of interesting and innovation with dishes, like day in, day out. A few years after I started, he actually acquired his first garden and then his second garden, so two separate gardens with different terroir producing the same vegetables in different ways. And it really allowed us to focus on the inherent flavor of the vegetable as opposed to just using a vegetable because that's the way you've always used it. For the past about 10 years, I've worked in a lot of kitchens with different, I would say different themes and different styles. Worked at some Spanish kitchens and some Southeast Asian kitchens. But while working through all those kitchens, I realized that people tend to use vegetables in one way. Usually, sometimes way too salty or too much garnish. You kind of lose the deliciousness of what the vegetable can be. At my last restaurant at Hemlock, we really like dialed in. We focused dish by dish. We would start with one vegetable and then expand on that vegetable using either the juice of the vegetable, fermentation, long cooking, dehydration, whatever it was. And it was a little bit out there for New York at the time. And right now I'm at Racines, and we kind of softened the edges a little bit, but still using those same techniques. As some of you guys know, on the West Coast, you guys have a much better bounty of vegetables than we have on the East Coast. So it's a little bit harder. We have to really find the farmers ourselves. The seasons are pretty fickle. So we really have to have a good tool set of techniques that allow us to really expound on what the dishes are. So when I took over this restaurant in January, it was a more French-focused restaurant with the traditional pairings of starters and mains, and I really wanted to get rid of that because the trends are, sharing and dishes that are a bit more concise and simple, visually impacting, so not having to have a lot of things on the plate just because that's the way that it's usually done. Really working with farmers that focus on certain vegetables. The tropea onion dish at the restaurant is an onion that it's a traditional variety from Italy that it's incredibly sweet, not as pungent as a shallot, but also allows for long cooking times because the size of the vegetable is larger. So we use the ability of that vegetable to kind of really push what the vegetable can be, and to showcase it as a dish on its own. Onions aren't usually, unless you're talking about onion rings, are not usually a dish that's craveable. This dish in particular, these are These are chickpeas. The whole dish is nothing but chickpeas. So we have green chickpeas where we save the husks, we toast them, we make a broth out of it with the cooking liquid of dried chickpeas. So you kind of get like a little bit of a balance of smokiness, almost as if you were to make a dashi. We use the chickpea flours to garnish, and the chickpea stalks we blend, roast at high heat, and make an oil out of it. So there's nothing but chickpeas, just finding different ways that the vegetable can express bitterness, sweetness, smokiness, or saltiness in terms of brininess. We really try to focus on that, and these techniques are kind of like, in a way, sometimes, this is a very focused dish, and I have other dishes that are not as centrally focused on one ingredient. But when you start thinking this way, what ends up happening is you find new ways to develop flavor using just one ingredient. It shouldn't be a handicap. It's definitely a way to expound on your cuisine, to find new ways to figure out new recipes, or to even just to start thinking a little bit differently, so you're not using the traditional garlic, salt, olive oil all the time. It's really possible to create similar flavors with vegetables, herbs, and produce that's more local to you, more sustainable. And it's just an exciting way to cook. I think that when I order vegetables at the restaurant and all the cooks gather, we start with the vegetable. We don't look at the produce. We don't look at the protein until much later. We're all pretty skilled. We work in a lot of kitchens, so we know that we can roast a piece of fish, we can confit, we can grill it and do it perfectly. But what we don't know is how the vegetable is going to taste when it comes. Is it going to be sweet? Is it going to be bitter? Is it going to be too tough to roast whole? Do we have to break it down? Can we ferment it? Does the fermenting actually affect the flavor or the texture? It's all a matter of just like finding a balance on what the vegetable can give you, in what way, and how delicious it can be. Because in the end, obviously, we're all just looking to make delicious food, whether it be exciting or interesting, or just because it's production. It still should be delicious, and there's no way around that without really focusing on the vegetable. So for the dish that I'm doing today, when I was coming up with the menu for this new restaurant, I really wanted to have a few dishes that were obviously not going against the ethos of the restaurant. It was a French bistro in a way, but the wine list was amazing, and I really wanted to do a few dishes that kind of give a nod to French culture. But I had fun with it, and then we were able to kind of just like wrangle a few dishes that are more what I love, and slowly the restaurant's been moving in that direction. So as the last speaker was talking about, brassicas in the winter are something that we have to deal with. I love them. I personally love them, but people aren't very used to eating them, at least not in craveable ways. There's certain satisfaction that I get from serving a dish that's very, very simple and using a cooking method just to create craveability, flavor, or most importantly in this dish, texture. So these are Caraflex cabbages, a really beautiful variety of cabbage that has a very meaty texture, but also there's a lot of space between the leaves, so you can create a lot of texture depending on what you do. We've fermented these and served them as sauerkraut. You can grill them fermented, and that's really delicious. But for this instance, what we wanted to do is just to serve them completely unadulterated, and the only accents to the actual dish are family members of the Brusca family. So what we do is we take these heads, we cut them in half, and we brine them in a salt solution of about 8% for about 24 hours. What that does is it kind of leaches out some of the natural water and then reintroduces salt into the vegetable. It's totally raw. You couldn't tell the difference, but if you take a bite out of it, it's definitely slightly salty. What this does when you're grilling, it's almost the same thing that you would get when you heavily salt a steak, where you create that crust and that reaction that makes things craveable, at least with grilled food. So what we do is we take the cabbage, we grill it on one side. about 80% of the way. So what you really have to look out for, because this is such a simple, delicate dish, is that you have to make sure that the core is cooked through. There's various textures up here. The outer leaves cook a lot faster. The core is basically like the meat of the dish. If this isn't cooked, it's very crunchy. It's kind of like eating crudité. But if you take your time and you cook long enough, you can use a cake tester and you can see that this is nice and soft, almost as if you'd slow roasted a piece of asparagus. The rest of the vegetable, the inside is a little bit more steamed. The outside, as you can see, is a little bit more green. So you get like a variance in the vegetable. You can really taste, I'm sure you guys have had roasted cabbage before, it's so delicious. But also raw cabbage can be tasty, and then we can achieve that by cooking this way for this long with this type of cabbage. So to create a sauce or a vinaigrette for this dish, I really wanted to not use any flavors that weren't the cabbage itself. So what we've done is we've juiced this exact cabbage just through like either a masticating juicer or just like a regular juicer, and you get this like beautiful green liquid. You probably don't want to drink it; it's a little bit astringent, but if you balance it out with a little bit of oil, you can create a really beautiful silky vinaigrette. So what we do is, it's basically nothing more than a few drops of lemon, just because the vegetable doesn't really have any acidity, and it's kind of necessary. It's okay. If you can get it out, that'd be great.
There you go.
Is that it?
Yeah. They're brand new.
Teamwork. Okay, so one of the things that I've been doing a lot recently with vegetables is inversing the vinaigrette. So technically what you're doing with a vinaigrette, you guys all know the ratio. It's a lot more oil than vinegar, obviously for the balance of acidity and fat. What I wanted to do just to create like a more focused flavor of the vegetable is take that and inverse it. So vegetable juice, about, I would say 3% by weight oil. And the secret to this, which is kind of like, for some people, not exactly as natural as they would like, but it really does make a difference, xanthan gum. What the xanthan gum does is it allows us to create this emulsion that is stable, but also creamy, where you don't lose the flavor from adding too much fat. As you guys have known, if you've made sauces based on roux before, you can kind of always taste that flavor of milk. And this just creates like a very, very clean sauce that kind of just barely drapes on the dish itself. And you can adjust the acidity and the flavor just by adding lemon and salt. So as you can see, you can kind of still have that green color, but the texture is almost of a thin vinaigrette, and it'll cling just like perfectly on the outside of the leaves. So at the restaurant, we do a variation of this dish. It actually has a little bit of duck fat and reduced Banyos vinegar, which is tasty as well, but for me, I like this version better. People in New York tend to like things that are a bit more like acidic and salty, so I had to find that balance in the restaurant. But if I had a restaurant out here, I would do it like this. So what we do is, when we pull it off the grill, we kind of basically just pull the leaves apart a little bit. The dish and like the aesthetic nature of the dish is basically just the cabbage. So if you take a little bit of a second just to move the leaves around so that you get the nice shape that you want. The sauce is super simply just kind of dropped in between the leaves. I like to add a little bit of olive oil, just because the sauce is so clean, you need a little bit of fat. Try to use something very light, like Arbequina olive oil from Spain, just so that it doesn't really affect the flavor of the vinaigrette too much. And then for the garnishes, I was walking around the garden outside and saw all these beautiful Brusca flowers and all these things that are kind of like just so sweet. If you guys are walking out, just grab a little flower from the garden and pop it in your mouth, and you can really see how sweet a brassica or a cabbage can be. So I was nibbling on those. I picked a couple of those. These are the actual leaves. And then we can kind of be very gratuitous with these blossoms because they're so good. And then just to finish off, a little bit more of the vinaigrette. And that's the dish.
Thank you so much, Diego. That's definitely a great way to create memories and craveability around brassicas. Diego is also single-handedly responsible for making my husband crave sunchokes now, so he definitely has a way around creating craveability. Thank you so much. It's now a great pleasure for me to welcome Shirel Berger, who is a CIA graduate, and two different people eating at her restaurant in Tel Aviv recently texted me during their meal telling me, you need to invite Shirel to present at the Plant-Forward Summit. That's how wonderful her food is. She has a vegan restaurant in Israel, but both of these people, whose opinion I trust greatly, told me, this is not the best vegetarian food I've ever eaten. This is one of the best restaurant meals, period, I've ever had. So not to create extra pressure for Shirel, but there's certainly a lot of expectations, and I'm so happy that she's here today to share her wonderful food and inspiration with us. Shirel Berger.
And thanks for making my heart beat a little faster. So hi. I'll start with a story about my grandfather. Opa in German is grandfather. He was part of the restaurant industry. We used to have long hours and hours of talking about restaurants, and his first advice was, do not do it. And then he understood, okay, this girl, let her do it. So really, Opa has been open for 7 months, and it's been crazy. 7 months of vegetables. I really, truly believe that one of the most exciting things today is vegetables and fruits. I fell in love with cooking with fruits and vegetables about 4 years ago. I came back from New York after school and working in some restaurants, and my friend was vegan. He said, you know what, just forget veganism, forget everything, just cook with vegetables. And I said, okay, fine. Just so you know, I've traveled a little bit in the world, and I have to say, hands down, Israel has the best vegetables, the best produce, seriously, and not because I'm Israeli. No, really. So I cooked a few vegetables and stuff like that. Oh my gosh, the PowerPoint is playing. Stop. Anyway, I was cooking and stuff, and I remember the second day I was like, oh my gosh, this is something different. This is the different thing my grandfather was telling me to find in me. So then I opened my restaurant, and it's history. Today, I'm going to speak about kohlrabi. The pictures have been running freely. I'll just say that kohlrabi is just, and generally vegetables, what we do is really put them in the center. I think the main obstacle that a lot of places that are vegan or plant-based, they try to mimic something from the meat world. In OPA, I say, do not use the word vegan. It's not part of what we do. It's just vegetables and fruits on the plate and using different techniques to extract different flavors. So kohlrabi, I'll start with that. We source our vegetables from a small farm, organic. It's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And most of the vegetables, most of the dishes that we create are either inspired by thought or just accidents. So the kohlrabi was kind of an accident. I was super busy. We were at the beginning of the restaurant. I said, I got these kohlrabis, and I'm like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Okay, fine. So I'll explain what we do with them. Okay, so we get the kohlrabi, we peel it. We have kohlrabi vacuum packed 1% salt by weight for 24 hours. This extracts the liquid, obviously, and keeps the structure of the cells while it's very long time in the oven. It's first roasted for 25 minutes on 210 Celsius and then reduced to 70 Celsius for 30 to 40 hours, depending on the how big the kohlrabi is. So when I was called for this conference, I was very excited and also worried about the kohlrabi, that it wouldn't be in season anymore. So I aged it in olive oil. Said, okay, let's see what it means to age a vegetable. So this has been aged. Here you can see in olive oil for 1 month. This is the same thing. I just want you to see the texture of it. It's fascinating to me, really, not because it's not me. It's really just the vegetable. So this has also been in olive oil for 1 more month. This is kohlrabi. That was also an accident. It was in the oven for too long. And so I said, you guys, we are not throwing anything away. And that's what we do at OPA. We do not waste anything. It's super important. I think that the relationship that we have with the farm, and when we go and we pick the vegetables ourselves, you understand where your food comes from, and therefore you have more respect. So this has been really dehydrated too much, then rehydrated, then dehydrated, then so many things I've been through this kohlrabi, I have to say. It's like I don't even want to continue. So, no, really. So I'm going to plate this one, and I'll explain before I plate, because I have a problem. I cannot plate and speak together. I'm like in this zone. So here we have fermented cabbage, Chinese cabbage. Also what we do a lot in the restaurant, since we have a lot of waste, we don't believe in throwing it away. Seriously, I know a lot of people like to say they don't throw away things, but we really don't. So we used to have a cabbage dish on the menu, and while we were peeling the leaves to get to the heart, I said, no, we are not throwing these away. We are going to ferment. Everything we either dehydrate or ferment. It's a joke in the kitchen. So so this is Chinese cabbage. We ferment it for 3 to 4 days, depending on the temperature in the room. Then we juice it, and then we smoke it. This is rye oil, just rye in ISI bottle to extract the flavor. We talked about the kohlrabi, dehydrated Dijon mustard, and this is pickled mustard that is just so amazing. We cannot get this in Israel. I've tried any kind of mustard. And so finally I'm in the US, and I'm like, I'm getting 5 pounds to bring back to Israel. Okay, so I'll plate this. So then we thinly slice them, and then we pound them like carpaccio. I have to say that we really don't try to use the word meaty or, all the things that refer to meat, but we do because on this kohlrabi, because it's just, that's the texture. It's like meaty. So I'm going to plate. Actually, I can speak and plate now, I see. No, it's the first time I'm doing this, so I'm a little bit, like my heart is a little bit on a race, but it's fine. And I'm like, wait, you never shake when you plate. What's wrong? Okay, so then we sprinkle the mustard, and what I really like to do is use the same family. If the cabbage is from the same family of the kohlrabi, that's good. We really, really use only the one ingredient to enhance it. It is so important. And that really is, I think that answers the question of how to really create that satisfaction with diners or customers is flavor. And that is the most, powerful weapon. I think a lot of people that come to OPA and stuff like that, they're not like expecting, here, see, I can't talk and play because I did a mistake. So anyway, so I think that a lot of times when they come to OPA, they don't know really what to expect, and they're kind of like laughing at us, and they think it's weird. They're like, oh, you have no vegetables, blah, blah. Okay, you have no meat, blah, blah. And I'm like, just taste. And I think that that's the most powerful way to change people's mind and open them up to a new world of vegetables and fruits. So this is the kohlrabi here. Thank you. So I have to say the next dish is the fennel. I have a very big obsession with fennel from the time I know myself. Really, it's a joke in the family. My dad's like, okay, what are we eating? Fennel. So this is really us using minimum ingredients and maximum techniques. So I'll start with the ingredients that we have here. So here is the fennel puree. We use the stalks to make the puree with fennel seeds, tarragon oil. And then we have the fennel juice. So it's very popular today to juice everything, I guess. So we juice the fennel. And this is the fennel. It's been braised in something really, really spectacular, I think. It's apple balsamic vinegar that we source from North Germany. It's been really fermented for 5 years in oak barrels under snow, so that really creates a unique flavor. And then fennel juice, some chilies and salt. Then we reduce it a little bit. And that's it. I'll plate. And then we have also fermented fennel. We ferment the fennel for 3 days in salt, tarragon oil, and fennel fronds. And then some salt. So this is the fennel. So great. Now once you can see the food, which I like to, you can't taste it, but now I think you can understand a little bit more about what we do at OPA and who we are. The obstacle of creating a cuisine that is based only on fruit and vegetables, I think is so difficult in Israel because everyone is very, very critical. If you know Israelis, they'll tell you their ideas about everything and how you should run your business and what is going to go and what not. But we don't listen to them. We don't, and really that's what we've been trying to do at OPA is create something new, really because we believe, and that's what I believe, that vegetables are the future. I mean, I think that it used to be that people would say, you know, the best chef can show me how good you are, your skills are, by creating a French omelet, and I say take a vegetable, just a vegetable, and play with it and create something new. So really that's what we do at OPA. And yeah, that's it.
Great. Thank you so much, Shirel. One thing that struck me to wrap up this session is obviously coaxing flavor has to start with flavor, right? And it can be easy to think, well, it's great if you're working with your farmer and you pick something from your garden across the street, and to think that it's not possible to get as much flavor if you don't have that same access. But I think one big role that you guys can play is in talking with your purveyors and demand flavors from them. And we heard yesterday from Aaron Kiefer, who talked about the fact, and it's something that is becoming more and more pronounced in conversations around that for so long, produce has only been bred for yield, for durability, for pest resistance, and has not been bred for flavor. That is changing, but some of that is for you to demand better flavor from the produce you're getting. So don't think that you can only do it if it's at small scale. You have the power to really make a big change there. So that's obviously then your role continues in coaxing even more flavor in the kitchen, but it starts also long before that. So I just wanted to give the power back to you also on this a little bit. So we are now going to go on break after one last round of applause for our three presenters. And we will be during the kitchen workshops, for those of you who are in that, we are paying very close attention to food waste, to composting, to recycling. So if you're in a kitchen workshop, don't take everything. Only take what you need and use everything. You've seen now a lot of examples of using from root to frond of everything. So keep that mentality in mind when you are in the kitchen. Your breakout selections are on the back of your badge. If you're not sure, the hospitality desk can direct you, of course. Katie should still be there. The Heston kitchen and the food business school classroom are both on the second floor. The food business school classroom will be outside, as you continue past the kitchen. If you are in a kitchen workshop, wait outside of the kitchen at 3 o'clock. They will call you in by group. And then if you are in the Napa Valley Vintner Theater for your breakout, that will be in the back of the atrium on the right, and there will be on the first floor. There will be people directing you, but just to give you a sense of direction. We will have a reception at 5:30, which will be prepared by the people of the Kitchen Innovation Challenges, so you'll get to eat food prepared by your peers. And then tomorrow breakfast will be at 7:45, and we will be back here at 8:15. And now you can all go on break, courtesy of the National Peanut Board in the atrium, and enjoy your afternoon sessions. Thank you.
Hi, I'm here to talk about senior living and healthcare, a very important segment. Using Rich's products, operators are able to offer a variety of customizable meals, higher quality food, and provide impressive selections. Snacks are also very important to seniors. So we have a breadstick that you can make out of our Rich's pizza dough. We also have a Rich's parfait made with layers of our Rich's on top, applesauce, and our crumbled Uber, which we call the ultimate breakfast round, or it's a granola round. Also, using our 6x6 Rich's flatbread, you can make a caprese sandwich, which is very, very appealing and tasty. You can also cut this into triangles for a shareable application. Then we also want to talk about the Rich's plant-based cooking cream. This is one of our newest products. It does not contain any of the 8 allergens. it can make a vegan tomato soup. You start with a little bit of oil and sweat your vegetables till they're tender. Then you add a slurry, some vegetable broth, some crushed tomatoes, and thicken that up. And then you come back and finish it with the plant-based cooking cream for a creamy vegan tomato soup, which goes great with breadsticks and our sandwiches. Using Rich's products, you can cater to that dinner party generation and provide impressive selections.
Hi, Chef Jake here from Rich's. I'm here to talk to you today about our new ready-to-stretch pizza dough. It's unique, authentic, versatile, and flexible. It gives you the opportunity to make beautiful artisan-style pizzas by taking dough right from the refrigerator onto the screen, stretch it to the thickness you want, and then top it and bake it in whatever oven you have. We have 6-inch or 12-inch dough. You may buy pizza dough already from Rich's and you say, well, what makes this different? What makes it different is it's ready to stretch right from the fridge. It's authentic, it's unique, and it's ready to stretch to give you that artisan pizza dough that you've been looking for your operation for years. So let's stretch a pizza. We'll use our 6-inch, 6-ounce ready to stretch pizza dough we took right from the refrigerator. This eliminates proofing, so it makes it easier for the operator to use. I'll stretch our dough without even picking it up. And you can make this as thick or thin as you want. I'll stretch this 6-inch dough to about 12 inches. And even if it's not perfectly round, it gives it that rustic artisan look. So today we're going to prepare a margarita pizza. I'll take our ready to stretch pizza dough, use a small amount of pizza sauce, spread it evenly, and then add our ingredients. I have sliced tomato, fresh mozzarella cheese, and we'll get this right in the oven and bake this. We're going to bake this at a high temperature, and we'll see how nice it comes out of the oven. Whether you have an impinger oven, whether you have a convection oven, or a wood stone oven, the pizza bakes up perfectly every time. So let's get to the oven. So here's our pizza straight out of the oven. We'll add our basil, and we'll cut it up for our customers to enjoy. We have to remember, with this pizza crust, the texture is that of real scratch dough without making it from scratch. And I think your guests are going to love it. So there we have it, an artisan pizza made with our Rich's ready to stretch pizza dough. Remember, no proofing, and we get that airy artisan texture with a nice crunchy crust. And I think you're going to love it. So I invite you to take our new ready to stretch pizza dough, serve it to your customers, and see what great reaction you have. Hey, thanks for joining me in my kitchen today. I hope to see you again real soon.
Hi, I'm here to talk to you about a very competitive segment to college and universities. College students are clamoring for plant-based products, and Rich's has a new broccoli and cheese pizza crust and a cauliflower crust. Lots of options you can do with these plant-based crusts. You can, of course, do a pizza, but it makes a great panini, a gluten-free panini. You can also use it as a salad bowl for salads. You can also use it as a gluten-free crust for quiche. You can also do crackers, breadsticks, and gluten-free croutons for salads. The product comes in frozen. It is fully baked. All you need to do is thaw it under refrigeration, and you can see how pliable it is. So you can actually fold it and make paninis out of it. It has a wonderful flavor. In fact, it's college student approved.
Here is a dish with spiralized sweet potatoes, clams, and a creamy Asian turmeric sauce. Using a spiralizer, spiralize the sweet potatoes into long, thick noodles. Cook the sweet potatoes in boiling water, stirring gently for about a minute or two. Drain and set aside. Heat the vegetable oil in a wok over medium-low heat. Add the sweet potato noodles. Stir frequently and cook just until tender. Remove from the wok and set aside. In the same wok, add a little oil, add the clams, turn the heat to medium, add the garlic, ginger, and chopped chili pepper. Add coconut milk and Knorr Professional liquid concentrate base. Add turmeric and fresh lime juice. Cook until the clams are open, remove, and then set aside. Reduce the broth until it's thick enough to coat a spoon, and season to taste. Add the noodles back into the sauce, toss gently, and then add the clams to combine well. Place the noodles and the clams on a plate, sprinkle with furikake, cilantro, and sprouts. Garnish with lime. So here is the finished dish. Enjoy.
This is a recipe for beet tartare with a quick cured egg, a modern take on an old classic. Combine the fish sauce, Worcestershire sauce, oyster sauce, honey, hot sauce, garlic cloves, and ground mustard. Gently place the yolks in the marinade. Cover and marinate in the refrigerator for 12 to 24 hours. These beets have been roasted, peeled, and diced. Combine the beets with the mayonnaise, Tabasco sauce, cornichons, capers, and scallions, and toss gently to combine. Season to taste and hold refrigerated. Add a small amount of oil to a cast iron pan. Cut the peeled shallots in half and sear flat side down until they begin to caramelize. Set aside. To plate, use a round cutter to form the beet tartare. Place an egg yolk in the middle. Garnish with bruleed shallots, radishes, asparagus spears, dill tops, and microgreens. Finish with dots of Hellmann's Real Mayonnaise. Here's our beet tartare with quick cured egg. Enjoy!
This is a great dish of pressure caramelized carrots with za'atar mayo, candied sunflower seeds, and roasted parsley and carrot top gremoulat. Combine the peeled trimmed carrots with the butter, the baking soda, and a little bit of salt in a pressure cooker. Set the pressure cooker on high pressure for 15 minutes. In the meantime, prepare the gremulata. Fry the carrot top and parsley leaves in canola oil until translucent and crisp, about 15 seconds. Drain on paper towel and sprinkle with salt. Gently toss the fried leaves with lemon zest and set aside. To prepare the za'atar mayo, combine the mayonnaise with za'atar and freshly squeezed lemon juice. Place in a squeeze bottle and refrigerate until ready to use. To prepare the candied sunflower seeds, heat the seeds in a small nonstick pan for about 3 minutes. Stir in the brown sugar, stirring constantly over medium heat until seeds are coated and the brown sugar has melted. Place on wax paper, sprinkle with salt, and let cool. To serve, place the warm carrots on a plate, drizzle with the za'atar mayo, top with candied seeds and gremulata. Here is the finished dish. Enjoy.
This is a light, refreshing dish featuring sustainable seafood. Alaskan black cod with a grapefruit relish and an avocado cream. In a bowl, whisk together the grapefruit juice, soy sauce, mirin, miso paste, and black pepper. Marinate the cod fillets for up to 30 minutes. For the relish, char the jalapeno over an open flame. Once cooled, seed and mince. Combine with the diced grapefruit segments, scallions, sugar, red wine vinegar, and olive oil. Season to taste and refrigerate until ready to use. To make the avocado cream, combine the avocado, garlic, yogurt, Hellmann's light mayonnaise, chili, and lime juice in a blender. Blend until smooth. Heat oil in a non-stick saute pan over medium heat. Pan sear the cod until opaque and beginning to caramelize. To serve, place the avocado cream on the bottom of the plate. Top with the fish and the grapefruit relish. Garnish with microgreens. Here's our finished dish. I hope you enjoy.
This dish is a fun take on a classic gratiné, hollandaise crusted cauliflower, seasoned with cheese and mustards. Cut the cauliflower into florets, then toss the florets in a mixing bowl with oil, hot sauce, thyme, garlic, salt, and pepper. Place on a sheet pan lined with parchment paper and roast at a 425-degree oven until the florets begin to turn golden brown, about 15 to 20 minutes. Remove and set aside. Meanwhile, combine the panko, parsley, lemon zest, and cheeses, then season with the salt and pepper. Combine the Knorr liquid hollandaise sauce with the grainy and Dijon mustards. Place the roasted cauliflower in a preheated cast iron pan, top with the hollandaise sauce, and sprinkle with the breadcrumb mixture. Roast for another 10 minutes or until the breadcrumbs are golden brown. Here is the finished dish. Enjoy.